Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Future Tech podcast series. It's me, Charlie Sell, the Group MD of Arrows Group, where I'm interviewing thought leaders, senior people, a variety of men and women who work in senior roles within our client base and in the further market. And it's all aimed at STEM graduates, looking at things that are very topical, obviously career advice to those who are looking to get into their next job, and picking up on topics that we feel are really relevant today. So I'm really pleased to have Kate Beverley with me today, who is the VP of Business and Portfolio Management at Pearson. Pearson is a global learning company that has literally just gone through a really impressive relaunch and rebrand, I should say, and doing some really impressive things. And what's also interesting is Kate leads, she's the co-chair of the employee of the Women in Technology and the resource employee group within Pearson, where they're doing some really impressive stuff, looking at things on how to improve women in technology, but also many other things. So we'll cover that as part of this podcast. So first of all, a welcome to Kate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks, Charlie.
Great. And we were actually saying literally before this that we both have young children and they may well come in and out of these podcasts, which is part of our home working life now and what we do. And you know, it's all part of the dynamic, I guess. So let's jump straight in and find out a bit more about you and a little bit about what you're doing within Pearson.
Sure. Hi. So, yes, I've been at Pearson quite some time now. So I never intended to stay for as long as I have. I've been there nearly 16 years. I've had a bit of a kind of journey to get here. So my background is an art student. I've got a graphic design degree from many years ago. I came out of that. It was in the 80s when it was do what you love, do what you're passionate about. Let's not worry about, kind of money and career, because there was plenty of it to go around well before the crashes. So I loved it. I came out of it, and all I knew that is I didn't want to do that as a job. So obviously I went back home and started to kind of apply for things and see what landed. I ended up working at a small company, very small company, ironically all with women, working on magazines and laying out kind of craft magazine. And I was the office junior, and I, in the old days when you took the post and picked cups of tea and etc. And I worked my way up, I'll kind of, I ended up being the art editor. I was running a magazine entirely myself by the time I left. It wasn't super well paid. It was also in the time when I was thinking, I need to figure out how to buy a house and how to afford things. And I was also kind of the guy or the girl in the office that fixed everything. So somebody said to me, hey, if you went into IT, you could learn loads of money. And I was like, oh, well, fair enough. That sounds interesting. So I spoke to them, and it was all kind of amicable separation. And I went off and did a course in a massively old language now called RPG 400, right before when the world was going to end with Y2K, and as the 99 ticked over to 1,000, and the computers were going to stop. So there's plenty of work around, and I loved the course. It really appealed to me. I think I've got a really interesting combination of being really logical and really emotional. I've got kind of high IQ, but the logic of the programming really spoke to me, so I really enjoyed it. I used that to get a job in a kind of help desk, and use that to get some other kind of programming jobs, and then eventually work my way up to be kind of program and project management. And that's when I took a role at Pearson. So I've been in that kind of project space, being the leader of projects and portfolios, and I've been in the kind of delivering and back and forth now in Pearson over the last multiple years, with different managers doing different jobs and taking on different responsibilities. I've had the SOX team report to me. I had the ServiceNow team that managed our kind of help desk ticketing system. I've had communication teams report to me. So my role at Pearson has always been varied and interesting, which I think is why I'm staying. I've got children at home, there's lots of focus from being a working mum, and there's lots of challenges. So having a job that kind of keeps it interesting without trying to move around has been really a blessing to me.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we were saying earlier, you now ultimately you report directly into the CIO, don't you? So you've really gone through that progression. And I guess one of the most topical questions then, knowing that actually getting more women into technology, and it is still quite a male-dominated industry, what have you seen? How have you seen it evolve with your career? And obviously, it's led you to start the Women in Technology. What have you seen over the last few years?
So it's interesting because obviously now I'm co-chair of that, and it's interesting to reflect back in the time when I worked with just women, and I have worked in that environment, and it was literally just women in the office, and that is obviously different. And I've worked in a very male-dominated world in the early 2000s, where literally I was in Hewlett Packard, I'm sure I'm allowed to say, and I was the only woman, literally as far as the eye could see. If you looked across the kind of cubicle land, if we all stood up, I'd have been the only woman. I was always cold because all the boys never get cold. I was always wearing more clothes than anybody else. And it was literally like, oh, there's the woman. I don't remember being treated differently, but I just remember feeling like it was just me. And sometimes on a good day, that was awesome. And I reveled in the difference. And other days it was like, crikey, it would be really nice if it wasn't like this. And then when I moved from Hewlett Packard into Financial Times, which was owned by Pearson at the time. And that was much more, probably wasn't 50-50, but it was much closer to 50-50 than anywhere I'd ever worked. And that was really nice, because then you started to see the balance. And that's where I think it started to figure out that if this is what we need the diversity. You need that diversity of thought and experience. Because if you all think the same thing and have the same experience, your answers are all the same. And that isn't always how you solve things.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's the way the world has gone, and I wish it was there 20 years ago. That diversity and it's not just sex, is it? It's also ethnic backgrounds, it's educational backgrounds, it's geos. The more diverse you can get, the more you're going to be a forward-thinking team and business. And I think the other thing that has come super prevalent to me doing these podcasts is it's not just about trying to improve diversity at the top end of the funnel, because actually that's where the limited pool is. It's how do we encourage and create more variety, more diversity at people entering starting their careers, who will then funnel through as their career progresses, and how do we retain them in these industries so they don't move on if they have children or if they have move geos. So thinking about, what was the reasons for you to start Women in Technology then for Pearson, and maybe tell us a bit more about what that initiative is.
No, sure. And you're so right about the kind of attracting. So our mission in Women in Technology is to attract, retain and develop women. We've got to be both ends of the spectrum. We talk a lot about this. If we just hire people in and they go, it doesn't solve the problem. We don't get the kind of parity. And if we just develop them and then they leave, that doesn't solve it either. So it's about both ends of that spectrum, making it a place where women feel like inclusive. They feel like they want to be here. We respect them and their opinions and their ways of working and their differences. I think for a long time, we've all sat here and gone, we're not different, but we are. And I think that's fine. And I think some of us are more different than others. And I think that's the point of diversity. I really notice it inside a team. My team has evolved over the last year for various reasons. And there's a guy that's worked with me for a long time, and he and I think the same, which is good because it makes communication great and straightforward, but it means we come up with the same things. And as you add other people in and you get a different perspective and different ideas, and you go, I could do something differently. Or they say something that sparks something for you or somebody else, and that's how you get kind of great stuff going on. So it's really important. But supposed to come back to your question. So my CIO is female, Mary Kay Wells. She's awesome. So she was really keen that we plug and support women, and she is an absolute foundation and rock in our ERG. So we got together in 2018 and said, look, we ought to do something for women. And at that time, honestly, I was like, we don't need to be special. We just need to kind of get on and make ourselves heard. And then as we talk to other women, it's like, not all of us feel like that. Many of us feel like we would like the support, even just kind of privately, quietly to go, hey, this is difficult some days. Yeah. I'm really sick of getting on a call when everybody else is a man all the time. Yeah. So I think we kind of, as a community, we were like, okay, so some of us might not think we need it, but lots of us do. And the people who are kind of slightly more extrovert and happy to say, look, hey, I'm a woman, I'm good with that, should help support everybody else. So we got together and said, right, we're going to run something. Obviously, back in 2018, 2019, we could be in the office. So it was very office focused, very location focused. And we thought we needed to do that and have people come together. I think what's really nice, lots of things have been difficult about the pandemic, obviously, but what's really nice is it allowed us to break the barriers and just run things at different time zones and involve everybody. So it didn't matter if there's only three women in an office, because you could all dial into this virtual community. So it's really grown massively in the last couple of years as we've kind of gone, actually, we don't need to go. You're all in Raleigh, therefore you can get together, but you guys have only got three of you in Brazil, so you can't, because it isn't going to work. It's been brilliant. So our membership has grown from 20, 30, 40 in the early days to 260, 270, getting close to 300 at the moment inside Pearson. And we realized very quickly that you didn't have to work in technology. Pearson has a technology department and then lots of obviously not in the digital world, lots of technology roles exist outside technology. And very quickly we said, it doesn't matter to us who ultimately you line report to. If you do a technology type role and feel this would benefit and you'd like the support and to be engaged, then come and be engaged. We're inclusive. And that has, I think, helped us grow. And then this year, what we're doing this year differently is that we now say we want men. If men don't hire women, then it isn't going to change the parity. If only half of us are hiring women, then that isn't going to kind of move it fast enough. And we've had so much engagement about men thinking they couldn't be part of it. I've got people, at VP level and right down at manager level saying, I've got daughters. This is really important to me. How can I help?
Yeah.
And we've got more confident about what does help mean. We're really clear now. You can be an ally and you can kind of be on the fringes and talk about it. You can come to events. That's all good with us. And you can actively do and drive things.
Yeah.
And you can drive one event or 10 events, or you can be passionate about something. We can support you. And we're really open that you don't, because I think we started off, you have to commit, 5 hours a week and, to get engaged. And I think it put people off, especially when everybody's at home and there's so much else going on. So we've really evolved to go, we just come and do whatever you can in whatever way you can. And we're completely open to having you and working with you.
Yeah, well, that's great, because I guess that's probably almost a utopia, isn't it? That it's a little bit, although it has to be done. It's a shame that we have to even think about women in technology or diversity. We'll know when we've got it right, when it's actually just a fluid. There is no differences, and if you're a working dad and you're actually responsible for childcare and that you've got a forum as open and supporting as if you're a mum, because I know personally with working from home now, I have 2 young children, and I've realized firsthand I've missed even doing the school run is part of connecting with your children. And actually I've realized there's a whole part of my world that makes me better in my job if I can balance and not feel like I'm the person who has to be out, in an office or working X number of hours a week to supply. But there's partnerships to be done, and if the company can support that, we shouldn't, hopefully one day it doesn't even become a separation.
No, I agree. I think that is the next evolution, that the men and everybody else feel like they can be their authentic selves. We sort of talk a lot as women about being authentic and bringing authentic selves. And as I think about that, I think, other people don't feel they can either. And we've created all this kind of, I don't know, corporate masking that goes on that doesn't help anybody really. And I think working from home has torn down so many barriers, because you can't, I don't tell my children they can't come into the room if I'm in here. I don't think that's appropriate, so I don't. And then everybody, you see, cats and pets and family members, and it just explores and allows you to have a different kind of conversation. So much as I can't wait to get back in the office, and I like the hubbub, I do like what it's done, and I hope we can retain some of the good that's come from that.
Yeah. And then we were saying it before the podcast, weren't we? It's almost like feast or famine. And so when the world does open up, there probably will be a rush of everyone getting back into the office or needing the variety. But hopefully quite soon, life will then settle into an environment where people can I call it a work-life blend rather than a work-life balance. If you can make sure you feel supported on both sides, you're the best self, you're the authentic self. If you feel like you have to be a different person or have to put different hats on, whether you're speaking to your manager and you can't say if you're being stressed about something else versus your family unit, you're always having to wear 2 masks, and it's fascinating.
Very much so. I've had people say to me, because my job, I work for the portfolio space and governance and kind of rules, inverted commas. So my job often says, saying no to people, and that has created perceptions. And I've had people say to me, I love seeing you and your kids hug. I have a completely different perception of you now than I did have, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So I think exactly. We can retain, I love that work-life blend. I'm going to use that. If we can retain some of that, that is going to be good, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, great. And so bringing it back round to our STEM listeners, because, a lot of them won't have families per se, but there's still similar challenges, in regards to, A, the type of companies they want to join, B, not having to worry about coming to a stage when life changes and they need to think commitments. What's your thoughts, and is Pearson doing anything or your thoughts about how to help on board or make that first step into your career, what sort of advice do you have or thoughts for STEM graduates?
We do. We are, yeah. So we are doing things. We have recognised that we need to get a younger workforce. We need to create opportunities. We need to kind of give back. So we do now create roles for graduates. We don't do a graduate program per se where we hire a whole load of people and kind of figure out what they're going to do. But if a role we think is earlier and simple, not simple, it's a junior type role, then we actually actively go and recruit a graduate, and then we get them in, and then we work with them to figure out what it is they want to do. I've had a graduate in my team for 2 years that just recently went from working in my team doing some analytics and kind of portfolio admin type work, and then has now gone into be a business analyst, going to work directly with the business to help with this huge program to take something that they've got into a new technology. And it's so lovely to see that transformation and see them think about what it is they want to do. I think it's really difficult, and I didn't know. And as I've said, I was a graphic design student, and now I've got something else. So I don't think you know what you want to be, possibly 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I think it's fine. So, take a role. We would love you to come work at Pearson and take a role that you could do that within 12, 18 months, we're having a conversation about what else and what do you really want to do and what have you seen and what looks interesting. And if that's something you do for 6 months and then it's something else, if you're contributing and giving back and the work is getting done, that would be good with us.
And again, I think that's great advice, because that is literally how the world has evolved now. There isn't per se jobs for life, but there's companies you can build a real career in and actually stay a long time if the company is open to moving to progressing people to their strengths. But as a person entering the job market, if you are willing to learn and continually learn, isn't it? Don't just become don't procrastinate or become stagnant. Look at where you can add value and be open to adding value, even if it's outside of your job spec, as long as it's within the boundaries of supporting your colleagues or the strategy of your business, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. We say when we're recruiting these grads that obviously they have to have to be competent and speak and kind of have some basic skills. But it's about the kind of personality and their willingness to engage and their willingness to take things on and see opportunities and go, and speak up and kind of, as I say, bring your brain to work. Don't do what I've told you. This is not McDonald's. You don't need to kind of ask the next question. If you think there's a better way to do something, or you see something that can be changed, then we love that. Yeah. So I think it's really important that, in an interview, show your passion, be authentic, be honest. That's that I love when I see people that are just, enthusiastic and keen and ready to kind of take something on. Yeah. And if it's, if you be honest, if it's, if you want a foot in the door, say, we want a foot in the door and I'm thinking that I could do this and that and the other, and I'm completely keen to roll up my sleeves and get on and do work.
And that's, again, a really good point, because I was leading on to my next question, which is the advice for graduates. How can people stand out now? I mean, the stats are quite in many ways quite scary, just how many graduates are entering the job market today. And although the economy is recovering, it's an different place to me 15 years ago. And so to be able to show that authenticity, to be able to show that passion, any advice from your side on how maybe someone can stand out a little bit when maybe they're one of 100 other applications or people?
Yeah, sure. I mean, short CVs, one-page CVs, a graduate, that is perfect. Where what course you did, what you were interested in, anything that you did that was kind of extra curriculum, just anything that kind of starts to build a picture of the genuine person versus kind of stats and figures, I think is important. And like I said, don't try and pad it out. It doesn't. We're not looking for long CVs in your early career, obviously. But then I think in an interview, come with questions and try not to ask the kind of don't Google and ask the questions that Google tell you to ask. I try and think of something. Somebody asked me the other day if I was an animal, what kind of animal I would be. I loved it. It was quirky, it was fun. And then they told me obviously what all the answers my team had given, which was obviously brilliant. So I think you can feel free to do something kind of quirky. I think it's fine. And I think feel free to be comfortable with quite a short interview. I think, you don't need to sit there. And I think if you think that the interview is good, you can go, thank you so much for your time. I hope you've got what you needed to talk to me. I think show a little bit of initiative and show a little bit of kind of spunk in terms of to me, an interview is two-way. It's, do I like you? Do you like me? It's not, it's not one way. And I think if you go in with that mindset, I think it helps you be a bit more kind of open and positive and comfortable to kind of be authentic.
Yeah. Well, and I thought that's great advice. And what great questions. I think I might actually include those in my questions on the other way around, because, I bet you there is definitely some nice psychology behind that and what your colleagues might have put you as how you perceive yourself. Great. And so, any last thoughts from you, for our listeners? This has been brilliant in the fact that it's refreshing when speaking to people, not only walking or talking the talk, but walking it. So what you've implemented within Pearson with the women in technology and your thoughts on graduates and how hopefully one day it becomes this just organic, normal working world, and we don't have to do so much focus on different things. Any last thoughts from you for our listeners who are getting really excited by this and thinking, well, I want to join a company that does this? How do I find companies that might embrace this, or what their first steps could be? Anything that you could think of?
That's a great question. Yeah, we've been trying to research, and is there a brand or a kite mark that we can go and kind of attain, therefore to say to everybody externally, Pearson is very pro women and diversity. And we haven't kind of solved that at the moment. It's one of the 21 goals for women in technology. I think use LinkedIn, use ways to try and track down people and go, I like the sound of those people and they work there. Maybe that's something I should explore. That's probably my tidbit.
And that's a brilliant one. I think you can do so much research now on companies, and LinkedIn it's not just a recruitment tool to find people. It's actually a place that people can research and find out cultures and initiatives, isn't it? So
people stay at companies for a reason. So you can tell that in LinkedIn. So you could get an idea whether people are coming and going, or they're staying. And there's something that would tell you. Well, I think would tell you something about the culture and what it stands for.
Yeah. Well, Kate, thank you so much. That has been a really, really interesting conversation. And for our listeners, it's probably quite a nice, refreshing podcast. As I say, the majority of our series, we look at emerging technologies, we look at how to hire into talent teams, but also to have experts who are literally leading the way in improving diversity, women in technology, and to see under the bonnet of some of the initiatives. And for me, one of my takeaways is actually including men into the program or including other people, so it isn't siloed. I think that's really, really innovative. So Kate, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed our show today.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
And to all our listeners, that's another episode of the Future Tech podcast. The podcast is on our website, arrowspodcasts.com, and it's embedded into our 16 partner universities, along with our Spotify, Apple and Google accounts. So one more time from me, a massive thank you to Kate. And to all our listeners, this is another episode of the Future Tech podcast.
Thank you for listening to Future Tech with Charlie Sell, a podcast from Arrows Group Global. Please subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss an episode. Arrows Group is a global technology recruitment and workforce solutions provider who focus on people at the heart of all our interactions. With in-depth technology expertise and global candidate communities, we offer bespoke solutions to every client and candidate. To find out more, visit arrowsgroup.com.